It's a pleasure, it's an honor to have you with us, to hear you speak, to hear you. Your conference departs from a very specific request. Look to the east, I guess. That's what we will be doing in the next hour or so, a little bit less. So before I give you the word, we're just testing our simultaneous translation. I guess everything is going according to what should be expected, I guess. So I presented you very briefly, sorry, but of course time flies, as you know. There's only one thing I would like to read before letting you present your conference. And I'm sorry, this is a quote from your book, so I will do it in Portuguese. Hope you trust our translation. Eu gostaria de vos ler a todos uma passagem da página 56, que eu penso o livro é um caminho russo. Enfim, é um percurso interior também de conversão, de espiritualidade do nosso conferencista e da sua ligação progressiva com Fátima. E na página 56 há uma referência, nestas páginas, aliás, há uma referência à aparição de julho que eu acabei de evocar. E há um parágrafo que me parece fundamental para aquilo que vamos ouvir, e antes de lhe dar a palavra, que é bastante simples, onde ele escreve: Fátima, aqui está uma poderosa luz sobre os dramáticos acontecimentos do século XX. Eis a grande revelação sobre a íntima e inefável ligação que une a Mãe de Deus e o povo russo. So I just read this quote when you speak about the great revelation, about the intimate connection, the Mother of God and the Russian people. So it's our pleasure to hear Alexander Havard.
Well, first of all, I want to be sure that you hear me well. It's okay?
Yes, thank you very much.
Very well. I always check because once I had a conference in Finland and I spoke during 1 hour. And in the end of the conference, I asked the students, did you understand something? And they said no, because we didn't hear anything.
Oh, crystal clear. There's no problem. Thank you.
So I check every time now I begin to speak, I check things are working well. Well, it's an honor for me to be with you in Fátima today. I will speak slowly because I know there is a translator who's working.
Yes.
It's an honor. I have been for the first time in Fátima. I was for the first time in Fátima when I was 20 years old. That's more or less 40 years ago. And until 2017, I didn't go back to Fátima. But during the last 4 years, I had the occasion to go back to Fátima every year. So I have been many times in Fátima now. I don't remember the number of times, but fundamentally, it's because during the last years, I've been to Fátima every year. And this is thank you to Maria Rosario, woman who invited me to give conferences in Portugal. So I am fundamentally related to Fátima. I'm here speaking from Moscow, but I moved to Moscow only 15 years ago. I was born in Paris and I went to school in Paris. My parents were children of, my grandparents were Russians and Georgians fundamentally, and they fled the Bolshevik Revolution 100 years ago, and they settled in Paris. And I was, as we say, the third the representative of the third wave of Russian immigrations. Not of the third wave, but third generation, because these are my grandparents who went to Russia. It was the first wave of Russian immigrants who went to France. I am the grandchildren of these people. We are the grandchildren of these people. And I received my culture and my education in France. And I went to college, I went to high school, I went to school, and during those years, the 1970s, it was just after or at the same time as the Second Vatican Council. It was a deep crisis in the church. I was maybe 13 or 14 years old. I did not understand, of course, anything about the crisis. I was too young to understand what was happening. But nobody was speaking really about God. There was no real faith. People were very critical about everything religious, even in Christian schools. And I was in the same wave as all those people. I was on the way to lose faith. I was on the way to lose the little things that I knew about God. But then one day, there is one of our teachers invited a few people from the Christian organization, the Church in Need, of the German organization. And he wanted them to explain us what was happening in Russia, to speak about the persecution against the Christians, not only the Catholics, but fundamentally the Orthodox and also the Protestants. And we had two guys who came in the room and began to show us slides about churches that were destroyed, that were dynamited, and the faces of people who were in jail because they were faithful to Jesus Christ after almost 70 years of communism.
I guess someone's online. Okay, you can continue.
Okay, so there was this interesting moment in my life. I was shocked. This was the first time I really heard about Christians being in jail and being persecuted and being martyrs. I knew, of course, that communism was evil because my grandparents were still alive and were used to tell us stories about communism. They suffered a lot. Many of their parents were killed and a lot of blood was shed at that time. So I was hearing of those people, and something deep in me happened at that moment. I don't remember how old I was, maybe 13 or 14 years old. And it was for me a sign of God that I am a Christian, that I was related to the Russian martyrs, and I am until now. I feel that I am the results of the blood of these people. If I kept the faith, if I went on developing my faith after those years, terrible years, horrific years of the 1970s, in a time when everybody was losing faith, I was rediscovering faith, something absolutely surprising, but I know perfectly it was fundamentally because of the testimony of those Russian martyrs, this testimony that was shown to us in a school in Paris, something very, and we could not expect that. It was a good choice of that teacher. And in May 13th, 2000, when Cardinal Ratzinger made public the third message of Fátima, I was in Rome that day, in Rome for giving a lecture on the great Russian philosopher Vladimir Soloviev, maybe you heard about him. But I could escape for a while just to see the declaration of Ratzinger. And in this declaration, he spoke about the third message. And in that third message, if you remember, he speaks about those two angels who were gathering the blood of the martyrs and sprinkling the people who were making their way to Jesus Christ. At that moment, I really understood what was happening, what has happened in my life. I understood that I was sprinkled by the blood of those people. And this is why I was making my way to God. This is why I was not lost. This is why I was supposed not to become an atheist or a pagan or an agnostic or a former Christian, as many people unfortunately have become during those years in the 1970s. So everything began to make sense for me at that moment. When I heard that message, the third message of Fátima, and that is why I consider myself really as a son of Fátima, because the message of Fátima is really this one. It is the blood of the martyrs that is sprinkled on people, so that those people, those souls, instead of losing their way, come back to Jesus. And I am one of them. So for me, Fátima is something extremely active, not only positive, but something extremely real, because it's about my life. It's at the center of my life. It is the explanation of everything I am and everything I do. It is meaning. The meaning of my life is there in Fátima. I am a fruit of that blood. And that's why I'm in Russia now. As soon as it was possible for me to come back to Russia, my grandparents left Russia 100 years ago. Since I'm young, since I've heard about, I've experienced that thing when I was 13 or 14 years old, that thing I just spoke about to you, I had a desire to come to go to Russia. I was sharing that culture because my grandparents were Russians. I was speaking Russian. I had a desire to come back to Russia. To come back not only because I belong to Russia, but to come back because I felt it was a question of justice, to come back to Russia, to give the Russians, after 70 years of communism, all the good things that I had received, and to share those things with them. And that's why in 2007, I settled in Moscow, and I've been here now for the last 15 years. So it was a question of justice, and also I had to be grateful to all the things I received from the Russian martyrs. So I came back to Russia to say thank you to all those Russian martyrs that have given their blood for me, because they gave blood for concrete people without even knowing it, probably. Well, they understood that their sacrifice had to bear fruits, but they couldn't see in a specific way for whom. Okay, so I was born in the blood of those martyrs. So I am related to Russia, not just because I am Russian by my grandparents, but fundamentally because I am spiritual son of those Russian martyrs. So that's why Fátima is for me so important, because it is the meaning, it's the history of my life, it is the history of what I am doing, it's the history of my vocation, the history of my mission. It is what gives meaning and sense to everything I'm doing. So I'm not an outsider was looking at Fatima and tried to interpret what's happened there. I've just been inside the very mystery of Fatima from the point of view of what I'm just telling you. I am one of those fruits of Fatima, in the fruit of that blood shed by the martyrs during 70 years. So here I am now in Russia, and I'm sure that the first question you will ask me is, has Russia converted? The truth is that yes, of course, Russia has converted. Even Lucia said that Russia has converted. The conversion that Mary had in mind when she spoke about the conversion of Russia on May 13, 1917, has happened. This is very obvious. Russia was killing Christians, destroying churches, and during the last 30 years, Russia has been building churches. They have built in Russia something like 30,000 churches during the last 30 years. 30,000 churches. I don't know if you imagine what that is. It's something extraordinary, something. So the conversion, which means that Russia stopped persecuting Christians, communism is dead, atheism is dead. This is something that shows that really Russia has converted. The question now is the conversion of souls. It's another question. You have the conversion of a country, which means that a country as such stopped being the great persecutor of Christians, rebuild churches, open its doors of churches for people, begin to give Christian education to young people, to adults, baptize people. In Russia, it's not common to see people now that are not baptized. Normally, almost everyone is baptized. If you're not a Muslim or Buddhist, you're probably baptized. It's not like in Eastern Germany, when the majority of people are not baptized at all. In Russia, people are baptized. Although during 70 years, the great majority of people were not baptized. Now, during the last 30 years, almost everyone is being baptized in Russia. All those churches have been built. The question now is the conversion of souls. This is something that can take a lot of time. By the conversion of souls, I mean people developing their spiritual life, coming back seriously to Jesus Christ. This we know it takes a long time. I want you to imagine that in Russia, all the family structure was destroyed by Bolshevism, completely destroyed. You don't rebuild families in 30 years. You need 4 or 5 generations to rebuild family traditions. 4 or 5 generations. During 4 or 5 generations in Russia, there was no Christian traditions. And we can say there was no family at all. So with that, with this, you can't expect everyone to have a serious, solid Christian life. It is something that comes with time. And the great challenge for Russia now is rebuilding family. At least the Russian state is trying to do what it can to rebuild families. And this is a good thing. It's the opposite of what's happening now in Western Europe. In Russia, there is a strong desire to rebuild Russian families. It's not easy at all. I repeat, it's a question of time, of decades. It's not just a question of a few years. And the Christian faith is rooted in families. Rooted in families. You can say whatever you want. You can read the Bible if you have not received in your family the Christian tradition, message of Christ, the human virtues, the supernatural virtues. If you're not being imbued by all those great things since you're very young, it's complicated. It's hard to be a Christian. So it takes time. It takes time. The conversion of Russia has happened. That's obvious. And the blood of the martyrs is something real. It's something absolutely real. And very often people tell me, look at Russia today. It's not exactly what the Virgin Mary had spoken about. And I tell them, don't worry, it will take some time. The real Russia is not the thing that you see now. The real Russia is what you see, plus all this blood that has been shed in that country. I remind my friends all the time that the blood of the martyrs is something that is forever. It is not something that it is taken out. It belongs to Russia today. The martyrs are alive. They are a very powerful power of intercession in front of God. And they are hundreds of thousands. They have never had in the history of humanity so many martyrs concentrated in one country in a century. So this is something that gives us a lot of hope. Hope that it takes time. We need to be patient, but at the same time, there is this blood that is there. It is still there. It has not disappeared. It's on the land. It's spiritual power. And the moment will come when all the power of that blood will spread on people. But we know it is there. There is something that living in Russia now during the last 15 years, there is something that I see with my eyes. It is for me a sign that really something important is happening. Although it may take time, it is something important. It is the fact that Russians said goodbye to ideology. There is no more ideology in Russia today. The communism was a powerful ideology, diabolic, satanic ideology. But 30 years ago, all those demons left Russia. And my impression is that they left Russia for the West. They did not just disappear like that. Demons don't die, unfortunately. So I saw those demons, my vision is that they have left Russia and they are somewhere else nowadays. And ideology is spreading all over Western Europe, the United States of America, and Canada. So the impression I have is this one. Russia is getting outside evil. You see, there is a movement of Russians, of Russia getting outside. It's not perfect, but it's a movement. It's a movement of getting outside those things that happened to them during 70 years. It's a desire to rediscover nature, the human nature. When you speak with the Russians today, they may have very different ideas, but you still feel that they don't have those prejudices that we see everywhere in Europe and in the United States, especially in the media. So there is something very important here. People that were 100% immersed in communism, which is a very powerful ideology, satanic ideology. Now, these people are breathing again. They're not perfect at all. Many are not even Christians. Many are not even interested in Christianity at all. But you see that there is a desire for naturalness, a desire for getting outside any kind of ideology. It can be the gender ideology, it can be liberal ideology, individualistic ideology, whatever it is. There is a desire to get freed, to be free from any kind of ideology. And this is something I think is good, something is powerful. And this is the reason why maybe Russia is very much criticized very often by the media in Western Europe. I'm not speaking about politics now. I'm not interested very much in politics. I'm interested fundamentally in spirituality. So what I see very well, very clearly, it is that all those people, when I was living in Paris, when I was young, all those former communists, Trotskyists, Maoists, they loved Soviet Union, but they hated Russia. Now they have the power in Europe, in many countries. They are leading the world. And they hate the Russians the same way they have hated them all the time. What they loved in Russia was Soviet Union, was communism. It was not the Russian people at all. So for them, there is a very clear continuation, in their way of understanding the world. They loved materialism, secularism, communism that was settled in Russia for all those years, 70 years, because this is what they wanted for Western Europe. And they never loved the Russians, and they go on hating the Russians. You know, I see this with my eyes. I know these people. I was with many of them, speaking with them. I remember the way they were. They were fans of Soviet Union. But Russia was the first victim of Soviet Union. Russia was the victim of communism. It's the biggest victim of communism were the Russians themselves. And this is something that I notice very often when I speak with people in Western Europe. And I compare. Western Europe is entering the tunnel of ideology. It's going to die. It's going toward death. And it may be even worse than what communism was about. I remember that Lucia used to say that the final fight will not be about communism. It will be about family. I'm sure you read those beautiful letters that Lucia sent to Cardinal Cafara. Fight, the final one will be about family. It's not going to be about communism. Communism is dead. So the situation of family, gender theory in the West, this is at the same level of communism. Maybe it's even worse. So my vision is that Russia is converted, which means that Russia has been freed from ideology. And Russia has the condition to come back to God now. Russia is getting outside the tunnel. Russia is beginning to see some light. And there is hope here. There is hope. And the West, unfortunately, is entering the tunnel. So the impression I have is that Russia is 100 years ahead from Western Europe, spiritually, not materially, but spiritually speaking, Russia is 100 years ahead because it has passed through this powerful test of ideology. And thanks to the Virgin Mary, the Lady of Fátima, Russia succeeded. It is not dead. I'm convinced that many other countries are without the special help of Virgin Mary. You can't survive the 70 years of communism. It's the end of civilization. If that would happen in Western Europe, I'm sure there would not be Western Europe anymore. People would not be able to face such a thing. So the evil that is coming up in Western Europe nowadays reminds me very well, very much, the evil of communism. So to conclude, is this, Russia has been converted, but Russia has still a long way to go. It's the way of the conversion of the heart of each person in that big territory. And you have to go on praying for these people. Conversion of the country, it's okay. But we have, each person in Russia, including me, we have to convert our heart. We have to become better Christians, and we have to discover Christ, and we have to live a holy life. And this will take time. But the second point that I'm speaking about is that if you take distance, you look what's happening in the world, and specifically in Western Europe, then you see that Russia is in the good way. Russia is on the way towards hope, while Western Europe is entering despair. I'm not a prophet, so I don't know what's going to happen in the coming years, but I'm very happy to live in this country, in Russia, although not everything is perfect here, obviously, nothing is perfect. But you feel that you are in a country that has been freed by the Virgin Mary, freed from an evil, and that now we have to go on the new way that God has given us. Okay, so this is why I am very, very positive, and I'm go on praying Our Lady of Fatima every day. First, because as I told you at the beginning, my life is related to Fatima in a very clear way, but also because I understand that all that is there in the heart of Mary and Fatima is not fully disclosed. We don't know yet everything about it. We are in the heart of Fatima, but we are not. It's not finished. And the Fatima thing, as John Paul II was used to say, it's going to be for a long time. We are in the very heart of it, and I'm convinced that during the next years and next decades, maybe we'll see the powerful intercession of Mary and all that. So it may be just the beginning. Probably it's just the beginning of the history of Fatima. So you should be happy, you Portuguese, to be in that country with such a great treasure, which is the Immaculate Heart of Mary.
We are. Thank you very much for your time, your words, your very kind words in the end. I would like to remember that in this apparition, the third apparition in July, of course, there are some very powerful images of pain and suffering, but there's also a message of hope that goes on in time. My Immaculate Heart will triumph, and we must always remember this. This is the last word. This is where we go through. So we are unfortunately a little bit short on time, but I would like to ask you one question, and perhaps if someone else wants to add, that hearing from you that the conversion of Russia has happened is a very powerful statement, and it's very important to us here in Fatima. And what I would like to ask is, what is the important in Fatima for the future in Russia?
What does it mean in terms of future in Russia? Well,
Because,
I don't know.
well, because of course we all grew up knowing that, relating this message to the end of communism. But we know, as you said in the end, that the prophetic message of Fatima goes on. So there is something to be said, I guess, to us, of course, and also to Russia, to the future of Russia from Fatima.
Yeah, because first, this is not a statement of mine. The conversion that Our Lady was asking that happened. This is a statement of Lucia herself. There is a statement of Lucia that she said, "This is what has happened, is what Our Lady was speaking about." So it is not that the conversion of Russia from the mouth, in the words of Luthia, is something that has happened. So what I was saying also is the conversion is there, but there are many things that we're expecting. For instance, we're expecting, of course, the unity in the church. We're expecting the unity between the Orthodox and the Catholics. And we still have a hope that this is something that can come. We still have hope that this is something that can come from Fatima. We don't see very much light about that. But still the hope is there. So this is what I was telling you, that we are probably in the heart of what's happening. It means that not everything has been said, not everything has been done, and still there is a long way to go, but it's in this way, the way indicated by the Virgin of Fatima, that all those great things we are expecting will come. And for me, of course, the greatest things will be the unity of the church. That will be something I pray for every day. I still believe in it. I think it's possible. I think it will be a gift of God. I know it is not the result of human deliberations, human contracts. I know it will be a pure gift of merit to the church, the unity between the Orthodox and the Catholics. It is something which is so fundamental in the third millennium that we don't even see the future of Christianity now without this reunion. We are not naive. We see the situation of the church in the world. The only way to survive as Orthodox or Catholics and to spread the gospel is unity between us. So this is another miracle. This would be an incredible miracle, same size or even bigger than the miracle of the end of communism. A different miracle, but with the same power. And I am obviously convinced that this will happen. I know that will happen. Many of you know that this will happen. But the important thing in our life is not that this will happen. The important thing in our life is, what do I do for this to happen? Do I really want that? Because by wanting that, I move forward in my Christian life. So the important thing is not that this will happen. The important thing is, do I have a desire for that? Do I pray for that? Do I sacrifice myself for that? Because this is something that makes me better. And the important thing in the end of the day is not the unity of the church. It is that all the Christians become better in looking and fostering that unity. You follow me? So it's a process. Process has to be a spiritual process for each one of us. So I'm not afraid, knowing that maybe this will not happen today, but it will happen maybe the day after today, tomorrow. Because I know that the important thing in the end of the day is not the unity of the church. The important thing is, did I, Alexander Havard, all my life strive for that unity? This is what is important for me, because this is what makes me a better human being and a better Christian. And this is what brings me holiness. So this is a very important message. And this was the message of Vladimir Soloviev, who was the great Russian philosopher who loved Catholics, who wanted the unity of the church. And this is what he was saying in the end of his life. All his life he's been fighting for the unity, looking for unity. And dying, he was saying what I'm telling you now. In the end of the day, what's important, it's not the unity. The important thing is that I have been fighting all my life for that unity. This is what God was expecting from me, and this is what makes me a saint.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this important message. In the end, I'm sure I speak on behalf of everybody in this room and also online by letting you know that we are very touched for your words. We will do our homework on this work of unity, I promise you, for the unity of the church. And we hope to seeing you very soon here in Fatima, as soon as the conditions will allow this, and join us in this very special sacred land that means so much for us here in Portugal and also means so much for you in Russia. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all of you.